I love the rusuh energy. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome to the open grand final round of IVED 2022. Before we start, I think it's fair to give a proper judge introduction first. So for Muti, you can share the screen. All right, okay, so let's meet the judges first before we give the honor to the 6 speakers of the grand finalists. Congratulations once again for ITBC and UEA for making it this far. So in this grand final round, the first panel of judge will be Max. The King of the East, Firmansyah from Universitas Hasanuddin. Yay. Okay, the second judge will be Melinda Putri Makassar, also from Universitas Hasanuddin. Okay, next panel of judge will be Chris Chong Tapruwaria from Universitas Sanata Dharma. Yay. Okay, next one. All right, Kevin, can I go to the toilet first from Universitas Diponegoro? Yeah, yay. Okay, so Kevin, you can go to the toilet now. Okay, next one. Okay, Myrel, the Pearl of Bikini Bottom from Universitas Diponegoro as well. Yay. Okay, next one. Okay, the president, Prista from UGM, okay, she will be gracing us with her presence in the pool of education as well. All right, next one. Oh, no. Prista is from UGM. She's the president of UGM, not from President University. And then Krista with the shooting voice. Yeah, I think the whole Indonesia agrees that Krista has the best voice of all time, right? Yeah. So looking forward to work with you, Krista. Okay, next one. Yeah. I will be accompanied by the Queen of Bucin herself, Mutiara Noverita from Universitas Diponegoro. Yay. And also the chair judge will be me, the King of Bucin from Sanata Dharma. All right, so that's for the judge introduction. So yeah, once again, in this grand final round, it will be the battle between ITBC as the affirmative team and also UEA as the negative team. Under the motion as ARA, this house would take the soul test to determine whether the person we're in love with is our one true soulmate. Without further ado, I'd like to call upon the first speaker from the affirmative team for Hans to start the debate. Check your sound and yeah, here.
Check, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Ntar ada mukanya Fakhri nggak suka. Fakhri bucin juga, mending tahu. Dah. Apa sih? Iya, berisik. Alright, seperti biasa, gender pronouns here today. Yep, aman, ada timer. Hopefully a fun final. Right. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Relationship is hard. One day I met the one that I really love, but the fear of me seeing or finding out that this person might or might not be my soulmate, for instance, the fear or no information at all, give me a lot of insecurity of how should I face my daily life at the end of the day. What is this debate about? I think that this debate occur in a society that literally believe and have a norm that this existence of soulmate are the epitome of your happiness. Why that's true? The world of utopia, it looks like daily needs of you are probably already being fulfilled. Access of UBI, access of job, and those kind of other entertainment sources are very likely to be high. And that means that the only pursuit that human eventually try to accrue is an emotional way for you to eventually content yourself by finding the one that is inherently compatible with you. I think that the focus of this debate focus on 3 things. Number 1, the context slide is very limited. It means that we never know who is ARA and what will likely ARA do. Meaning that this debate not talk about what is the implication that will ARA do when they eventually get this information. What we talk about is the emotional capability for ARA to eventually get this information, why the person are justified to get the information, and how will they face their daily life if they are not having this information. Secondly, I think that the assumption in this case is that the accuracy of this kind of technology should be 100% correct. What is characterization of soulmate in this particular case that society believe currently? 5 things. Firstly, daily routing capability, same wavelength. You like the personality, it usually make you laugh and those kind of things. Highest endorphin rate for you on your daily basis basis, very small likelihood of them leaving you, and so on and so forth, right? It means that all the idea about trial and error, a process of relationships, so on and so forth, will very likely or not assume much better when you do it with your soulmate rather than doing with someone else that most likely is not your soulmate. Meaning that there's a bit accrue when we talk about whether or not the information should be gotten by Ara. Two things. One, why does having the information is very important? I have 3-layer analysis on philosophical reasons. Firstly, let's talk about first, how do we fall in love with someone? I think the way we fell in love with someone is limited toward our capability to finding a certain information that we're able to get from the individual that we live love in currently. What does it look like? It looks like the amount of people that we meet on the street. Sure, maybe Fakhri or me right now having a certain girlfriend, for instance, but we never know that this person is our soulmate, and there is never be an assurance that this person are the best for our life. Simply because you might eventually meet someone else in the future, so on and so forth. Right? Our limited capability to find to meet everyone in this particular case limit our choices. But secondly, it's also because of limited amount of interaction. I think that when you meet someone on the street, for instance, that you are just an acquaintance or someone that you never know, or just a stranger, for instance, it's very awkward for you to go to the train, for instance, and ask for a number or even hit him or her up, for example, so on and so forth. That gives us less capability, especially when you are introvert like me. Thirdly, is because of the limited ability as well, coming from our surrounding to eventually give us recommendation or something like that, right? What is the inline and what is the point of this principal idea? This principal idea means it is very evil for the one that create our existence to make us choose who we want to fall in love with, where the choices is eventually very limited and the information is eventually very limited. This is why the information, whether or not the one that we are currently with is soulmate or not, is very important for us to have. But second principal idea is that regardless the action what Ara did, whether it's harming other people, so on and so forth, we said it is a justified things to do. Why is that so? Firstly, love is ultimately about your own happiness to finding the highest endorphin at the end of the day. What does it mean? It means that regardless what you did, it's based on the calculation that you think that this is the best for you today. Whether Ara leave the current girlfriend or boyfriend, we don't care. This is the choices that Ara should make, and this is the information that Ara should eventually have. Even if it is harming other people, we said it is completely fine rather than you harming yourself. This is a self-defense mechanism for you, not actually being harmed for a relationship that not actually being fulfilled as a soulmate, for instance, and so forth, that we later explain in the practical idea. But third, lastly, about principle idea is that even if you never find someone you love, that is very unlikely to begin with because the norm of the society, everyone used it. We said comparative are much better. Why? The comparative in the set of the house, you facing breakup, you facing the phase when you are questioning whether or not the person is actually your soulmate or not. But this is bad because relationships are full of struggle and full of fucking hard. It means that every day you eventually face fighting, for instance, and those kind of things. The comparative is simple. You find happiness from other things that is being provided by this robot. Maybe you play basketball with the robot, or maybe you just playing in your computer, just watching waifu, for example, so on and so forth, like me, and I find happiness from it, and I'm proud of it. Second idea about practical harm. Firstly, let's talk about insecurity. What will happen in the side of the house? You always question yourself and your girlfriend or boyfriend. Why is that so? Because you know that there is a fear of you that you might choose wrongly, that this person might not be your soulmate at the end of the day. Why then is this very likely to happen, and other kind of alternative never eventually able to make you less insecure about it? The reason why other alternative not existent, because all the alternatives such as going to therapist or family support, bad rooted toward you finding a certain answer toward your own insecurity. Because the information you never eventually got at the end of the day, meaning that the answer toward your question will never eventually got. When you go to therapy, most likely therapy just asks you, oh yeah, just question yourself whether or not you are happy with your current condition, just ask or something like that. You never have the answer at all because you never have the information whether another person is your soulmate. The price is on three folds. Firstly, internal from yourself because of the insecurity that you fear that you might choose wrongly. Secondly, it's also coming from your partner, that your partner may also question whether or not you are the soulmate that your partner should have at the end of the day. Thirdly, it's also from society. You see other people being happy with someone that they truly love coming from their soulmate, for instance. You meet your friend, maybe you meet Marvin, where suddenly Marvin told me, hey, I already use this machine and I find my soulmate, so on and so forth. This gave me a lot of insecurity whether or not I'm happy with my current condition because other people are happy on it, right? The delta is exclusive information that you know the answer, so that this is or not your soulmate, right? But second problem is about regret. I think the relationship always have a problem daily. I think I don't need to explain how much I fight with my girlfriend or Fakhri, so on and so forth, right? So the question that happened is that the person or Ara will likely to to ask, what if I'm taking this kind of machine? What if I able to eventually take the test back then, for instance, I able to opt out? What if the one that I have eventually made right now is not actually the one I love? Because everything ends and you have a tons of regret on it. It's become problematic for you to eventually face your daily life at the end of the day. But secondly, the access on information or the access in daily life with your current partner are problematic because you are forcing compatibility toward them. You are forcing to eventually make as relate as possible with the current partner, which is problematic because it means that you sacrifice more than you should be. It means that you might come out from your comfort zone and live in a very uncomfortable situation where you are forced to eventually wake up 5 in the morning simply because you need to eventually accompany him or her for exercise in the morning, so on and so forth, where you don't actually want to at the end of the day. It also leads into self-blaming. You are the one that you have the control over whether or not you take this information or not. It means that more likely when you face this kind of issue, you likely to blame yourself because of your incapability to eventually use this machine. But secondly, it's also about questioning sacrifice that you have. I think relationship no more is eventually create a lot of sacrifice in your life, right? You sacrifice your time, you sacrifice your money, so on and so forth. You question when every time you fight, you question whether or not the sacrifice is eventually worth it, whether or not you preserving your current fighting simply because of very big fight for leaving the seat of toilet up or something like that is eventually worth it or not. You question this every day, but you eventually succumb and say that, well, fuck it, I think this is the soulmate that I should go, so on and so forth. I think the delta in practical is simple, that you might have someone that's much better for you, but in a more philosophical, emotional harm, you harming yourself with those kind of questioning axes in your side. I think that the simple delta is that when you have the information, you sacrifice, you can say it, that this is worth it, because it's the one that is truly compatible with me. I thank God for that. Very proud to affirm.
Yeah. Right, I think the first speaker from the affirmative for that speech to hear the response. I call upon the first speaker from the negative, to Jere, here.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. Okay, setting up my timer. Okay, wait. Okay. If I get disconnected, please do cut me in the middle of the speech. I'm going to start the speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels exactly understand that the mystery of love is the reason why love is wonderful. When you force and have to be burdened, that you have to find the one soulmate, even if it's something that's inherently objective, it makes your relationship less meaningful and even harms you in the end. Further elaborate in my speech. We think that the standard of a good, fulfilling relationship, understand that having a soulmate is not equal to you having pure happiness and you're always constantly going to be happy. Because the quality of a relationship is not contingent on the fact that they're your soulmate and they're constantly going to be good to you. That is not a fiat that they can take in this debate. Our stance is simple. We want to trust that the meaning of a soulmate is not what a machine arbitrarily decides, but what they want to construct as a soulmate. If they, for example, just because, for example, you're not with a soulmate, does not mean that you cannot have a functioning relationship that makes you happy, for example. You can work out your relationship, even if it's not an objective, for example, soulmate that exists under our side house. We can still have happiness, all the benefits that they try to claim under their side house. What we're going to do is simple. We're not going to take the test, but if we want to, for example, continue our relationship, it's fine. If we want to stop our relationship because in the middle the relationship is not good and whatnot, it's also fine. It's up to the person, it's up to Ara to decide what kind of relationship she wants, for example, at the end of the day. Before I move on to my arguments, few responses towards their side house. First, they talk about how, for example, the moment they are in this relationship and they don't know, for example, that these individuals, for example, are inherently bad individuals, this would hurt them, for example, at the end of the day, because, for example, they have the capability to hurt you and whatnot. We think that under our side of the house, there are preventive measures that you can take. That is to say that you can, for example, always habituate communication, which exclusively exists when you, for example, don't have to find that this is somewhat your soulmate. But also we think that in the status quo, to prevent this, there's socialization of red flags, for example, in status quo, in media like Twitter and whatnot. There's also warnings, for example, from your trusted friends, families, and whatnot. Second, their fiat this debate is only that this machine exists. But whether society deems that having a soulmate is what makes a great relationship, or if, for example, they're inherently going to be happy with their soulmate, is not a fiat that they can take this debate, and it's not a benefit that they can claim. Thirdly, we think that what's going to happen under their said house is that they're going to test one by one, right? So really finding out that someone is your soulmate, even if they want to claim that they're going to inherently be happy, is not a benefit that they can claim, because the technicalities of finding one by one, and for example, this is not compatible, whatnot, is not something that would always favor you in the end of the day. Exactly, because the pain is that painful when you know that there is, for example, no soulmate, you cannot find them because it's hard. You don't need to know. You just have to work out the current relationship that you have, and just, for example, work out things that you want to see inside of your relationships and whatnot. Two arguments I'm going to talk about my speech. First argument is I'm going to talk about why this is in line with interests of Ara, is to say to have a good relationship. We think that 3 parameters to a good relationship. First is habituating trust. Understand that habituating trust and making a culture in your relationship that you trust one another, that you, for example, are not going to backstab one another, talk bad about one another, even if when like tough times come. This is something that is really necessary, or a parameter of a good relationship. We think that this kind of habituation does not exist when you, for example, or the status, for example, of your soulmate is determined by a machine, because understand that this habituation is a process that has to be learned. Under their said house, when you, for example, have this kind of like relationship test and whatnot, you, for example, do not have natural trust, because the trust is simply because, oh, this machine says that this is my partner, and this machine says that they're really compatible with me. Therefore, regardless whether or not, for example, the habituation process is too hard and whatnot, it's something that's like going to be fine, and we're still going to be compatible in the end of the day. Therefore, the habituation process is very much burdened or skewed by the fact that they are, for example, your partner. That is to say that the moment there's conflict and whatnot, usually what's going to happen is that there's not going to be any like mechanism that's healthy. That is to say, for example, you want to confront your partner and whatnot, because in such an existence of a problem, because you trust your partner and the status of your partner as a soulmate too much, you're not going to want to habituate, for example, this kind of relationship. It's something that's not good. But this leads up to my second point, growth. We think that in a relationship, other than habituation, you actually need each other to grow and become better individuals, right? Understand that I've characterized you the moment you know, for example, this is a soulmate, and you really trust them, for example, because like the status says that this is something that's inherently objective. There's 2 likelihoods that's going to happen towards Ara. First, Ara is going to blame the machine for saying that this is my soulmate. But second, they're going to blame themselves as if like the mistakes in the relationship exist because of me, because the machine says that this is something that's supposed to be compatible for me. This is harmful for Ara under 3 reasons. 1, Ara does not grow as a person because you become naive and trust and like make believe that this is something that's external, meant for me. You don't change in the end of the day. Second, because there's too much trust towards these kinds of individuals. I've told you before, they do not solve these issues, and they do not habituate themselves to actually solve issues. But for example, they want to talk about it to other people and not confront. No growth, relationship becomes stagnant. But lastly, you don't try to change or find the reason why this relation fails, because even if yes, like even like if there's this status of soulmate exists, there still may be certain incentive to change or work out your relationship. We think that this incentive is lesser because of the dominant fact that, oh, they're my soulmate, we're going to work it out in the end of the day. We think that growth is something that's really important in a relationship, because usually the reason why relationships fail is because there is no habituation, there's also no growth in the relationship. Slowly, relationships that start with honeymoons and whatnot fail because the relationships do not grow. We think that habituation and growing relationship is important, exclusively achieved under our side, when you do not know, for example, or you do not have to know whether or not this is someone who's your soulmate and whatnot. But lastly, on effort, parameter of a good relationship. We think that the moment you actually do not know that they're your soulmate, for example, there's more effort for you or extra incentive to make each other happy. Why is this not likely under their said house? Because the moment you know that this is my soulmate, you're going to think, oh, because they're my soulmate, they're just constantly going to be happy with whatever I'm going to do. I do not have, for example, to do more, or I do not have to, for example, put an effort in my relationship because they're my soulmate. They're going to constantly like me, they're going to constantly validate me and whatnot. In turn, this effort that is a beautiful part of a relationship is not achieved. And that is why we think that the parameters of a relationship are better achieved the moment, for example, you actually do not have, or you actually do not understand or know that this is, for example, your soulmate and whatnot. It's better achieved under our side house. Other than that, we think that the moment we think that also the interest of a good relationship may be harmed under their side of the house, because, for example, there may be certain distrust because, for example, oh, we're really close to one another. Why would you, for example, have to test us our relationship because we've previously been close? There may be distrust. So this relationship that Ara is taking may be harmed because of this distrust that's going to happen. But quick second argument, right? Why the status of someone being your soulmate is not the ultimate parameter of happiness? Why not knowing them is something that's inherently better? Understand that humans are very much prone to change. Soulmates are also prone to change. Even if machine says that this is your soulmate, there's compatibility and whatnot, there's no guarantee that they're constantly going to, for example, fulfill your needs and whatnot. So regardless, we think that this status is not the ultimate standard of you having a great relationship and whatnot. But understand, under their side, the moment you take this, it creates burden on two layers. One, you have to find whether or not this is someone that's compatible to you, or even if it's something that's true, because of the too much trust, the relationship doesn't grow. Under our side, we ultimately prove to you why the moment you don't know, you're going to create better relationships. There's more incentive to change, and there's more incentive to grow and whatnot. You also do not harm, for example, the feelings and emotions that exist in the relationship. For these reasons, proud to propose.
Right. I thank the first speaker from the affirmative. Negative, I mean. To extend the case of the affirmative, I call upon the second speaker from the affirmative. To Fakhri, the floor is yours. Here.
Iya, ada muka gue 3 Rik.
Bentar ya, aku ngilangin nanti.
Udah.
Bentar ya, Kak.
Muka gue 3 bagus nih.
Lu?
Ayo.
Kenapa ya?
Ya lu minum dulu lagi. Kalau enggak.
Iya. Bentar ya, disuruh minum sama Hans. Serem banget.
Gue mau minum juga.
Diwit dulu, maaf udah. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Diem, Hans. Diem, jangan ikut. Nyebelin ya. Start. 3, 2, 1. Soulmate is not perfect, but at least they're the most perfect one that we can ever reach. We understand that humans aren't perfect, but at least we can try to find the ones that's best. But this motion is not about like which one is going to be the best or not, because we don't inherently know whether Ara is just a dum-dum that will always believe in the machines and not have any sort of like independence by herself, right? I think the most important thing is whether or not you have the information and whether or not that particular information is important. We don't know what will Ara do and suddenly, oh, well, I will believe the machine. We don't really know that, right? So all the things, like all the principles argument that was brought by Hans is something that's also very important. But okay, let's talk about soulmates first. They said that, okay, soulmate's not perfect and it will necessarily, it means that, you know, it's always changing and so on. Firstly, we already told you about how we agree about how soulmate is imperfect and so on, but most likely they're still far better than like your side of the house, which are not a soulmate, or we don't know whether or not they're soulmate. We don't know like the current like partner of Ara, whether they are a soulmate or not. But the point is that soulmate most likely are going to be in your same wavelength. Most likely it's easy for you to talk with them because they are soulmate, they're the one and so on. But secondly, soulmate is not changing. Judge, let's read the context slide. It is believed that it exists the one. It's not like the one, and one, right? So necessarily, this motions is limiting that there exists that people like who are the one that they exist this particular. So if they want to bring arguments like trying to break the motion, oh, the soulmate exists, we don't think they can run that argument. We think it's out of the scope of the debate. We don't think that's what the E-Core wants, right? So okay, what did they brought? They never told you why that information is something that's very important. They only told you but the practicality of how then it will hurt you and so on and so forth. How you might not, you know, not habituate yourself, not trust, self-blame, and so on. All these harms that they brought and they shoplifted, right? What is the most important thing about taking a choice and whether the choice is good? We think a best choice that you can make in your relationship is a choice that is informed currently. We don't know whether Ara will in the end pursue with their soulmate or like pursue their current relationship currently, right? Meaning that that particular choices, to make that best choices, is an information that is needed. If, for instance, Ara currently wanted to continue and say that, the current partner that Ara have is not the soulmate, for instance, at least Ara can make amends with and says that, this is might not be my soulmate, but this is my choice. There is an active effort coming from Ara to know, and therefore not keep overthinking it and not keep changing it, right? This is why then the choices is best on our side of the house, because they know the consequences that would happen. They will always then on their side of the house question what might be, what then could be better. This is something that's very crucial that definitely will happen, that regardless who Ara is and the choices that Ara make will definitely happen. We think this is the impact that you should take into account. But okay, let's get in their heads, right? Like how then it's self-blame and so on, right? They say that it's going to self-blame because we believe that they're soulmate and we won't do any effort at all, right? Well, currently we always believe that our current relationship that has been going on are our soulmate, because all the media that being said that you should find your soulmate, you should find the one, and how our community forms, or our family who says that you should find people who are right for you and so on. So we always believe, and we want to believe, we try to project ourselves and says the people that we are currently in dating with are people that are our soulmates. We hurt ourselves to do so, and we don't think that's something that's good. At least on our side of the house, they hurt themselves that there's choices, and we think that's good then if there's choices, because we don't think that even in the end of the day, if like the harm was that we never find our soulmate, at least because we already live in a utopic world, in a utopic future, at least we can live by ourselves that makes its own choices, rather than hurting ourselves, rather than trying to sacrifice our time, trying to sacrifice our effort to someone we don't really want in the end of the day. But okay, even if, let's say, there is a difference somehow in the end, right? There's a difference that they say, then on our side, somehow in the end, these machines will make you unnatural and so on and so forth, right? First of all, they never explain that is not good. I mean, like, if the machine helps you, then that's good. I mean, like, currently we help Tinder and people are getting married from Tinder, and means that, we're getting help by a machine as well, currently, even current status quo, right? Without like quote unquote having soulmates, because we have certain preferences that people have, for instance. These are the kind of thing that still happens anyway, so we don't think that unnatural is something that's very important. We just think there's an edgy argument coming from them. Try to find better argument, right? But okay, let's have their parameter, which is habituations and trust. We think on their side of the house, this will be worse. Why? We think when you are a soulmate, they're the one, and you want to keep them. You don't want to lose your soulmate. Sure, they are not imperfect, and everyone knows that, because humans are inherently imperfect. And I think that everyone, like an average real person, would necessarily know that, right? The question here is whether both actors in that particular relationship have an active effort then to say that they want to fight for the relationship, right? On their side of the house, most likely that's something that's one-sided, because we don't know, right? The partner, like the context doesn't give us like what the partner is, the partner a bitch or what, we don't really know, right? The point is, most likely when you know who your soulmate is, then most likely then it's easier for you to have an active effort, which it builds the relationship, it builds the trust, because you are currently on the same goal. When you are in different relationship, you don't necessarily know whether they're currently searching for a soulmate, or necessarily currently they're only searching for like a fun relationship, as it is, right? This is why that many people are destroying relations, are destroying people, creating more traumas, because they just do relationship for recreational, right? We don't necessarily think then that's something that's beneficial for you if you want to talk about how trust and so on in the end of the day, right? And then skewed view, we don't necessarily understand where then skewed views would most likely happen then in the end, right? Sure, might be in the worst case that they try to fight it, but most likely it also happens on their side of the house if they always try to fight for things that are not right in the end, right? But sorry, okay. But okay, what are the other things that currently happens? What do we know about ARA, right? The problem with this is that all their alternative talking about, there is like the red flag thing, right? There is like people socialize and trust and whatsoever. There are preventive measures and so on and so forth. The problem with this, we don't really know the preventive measures. We don't really know the perpetrator who are currently the guys coming from like bungkus. We don't know that they have this kind of fetish that that, right? We don't necessarily know, right? And when we talk about Ara currently, we're currently already inside of a relationship for a certain time, it might not be enough to know the red flags that they currently have, for instance, might be because they are not that intense in the first place and so on. So talking about whether or not you know like the bad things that currently happen and so on, most likely then harder on your side of the house, because things that are complex, that are need to find in like the far future, most likely then on their side of the house, regret comes and blame on your side of the house comes from your side of the house when you know the red flag that exists. At least on our side of the house, when you already know, maybe you are not a soulmate from and you cannot find your soulmate, and you try to push this burden, at least you know what are the things that you most likely are not compatible with, right? At least you try to look on things that might not be good in the first place. But okay, bottom line, okay, they blindly believe in the end of the day, and they blindly follow these machines and so on. This is the worst case scenario with no likelihood at all by team negative, right? We think the reason why this is better, because at least the comparative you have to see is the comparative whether you want to live with a soulmate and maybe live the fantasy that you want to have, right? At least that someone that is in the same wavelength with you, that is most likely more connected in comparison with like the people that they fight, who's most likely red flags you don't necessarily know yet. We think this is the best options that ARA have, and we think it's principally just, and that is why we're so proud to affirm. Thank you.
Here, here.
Right, I thank the second speaker from the affirmative. Next, to hear the response and to extend the negative case, I call upon the second speaker of the negative team. Here.
Hello. Turn up my timer and arranging the papers. Right, cool. Gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Two things that I don't think government can rebut, right? Because it's a fiat. One, Ara is in a long-term happy relationship with her current partner on which she had many memories with, and then she's happy. Read the context file, I think it's there. Second is that the machine does not automatically assumes you're gonna find a soulmate. It just assumes that you're gonna check if someone is a soulmate, and if you happen to be within the the closeness of that particular soulmate, then you can say, the machine can say, oh yeah, this person you brought is your soulmate. So it's not a certain benefit on Gov that soulmate is gonna be found anyway, because they never prove to you why people have to, ARA has the capacity to reach that soulmate anyway, or why that soulmate most likely is gonna look like. We're proud to propose. 3 things I'm gonna bring, right? All engaging to government's case. One, why soulmate is a privileged notion, and that it's okay for normal people to settle. Second, talking about why ARA, as a liberate, a modern woman in a utopian society, I guess, needs to have a liberated agency to choose on her own what is good and what is not. And thirdly, why on the very worst case scenario, just engaging to Gov's very worst case, why even if they break up on our side, it's better, right? Moving on, first things first, privilege. So exactly like PM says, right, which is weird, that to find love is a form of privilege. One, you have to be good looking in accordance to beauty standards at the current time. 2, you have to have a huge money to afford social circles outside of the geographical barrier of your own country or city or whatever. But 2, time, money, and energy to go on dates, talk constantly, go to the dehumanizing slide of Tumblr or Bumble or whatever. 3, you have to have social capital, huge social battery, healthy mental health, for example, not anxious talking to new people, whatever. Assuming that Ara is an average reasonable woman, which I think she is, she's lucky to have found love in such a high competition of love in a world that PM also picturized as very love crazy and wanting to find love at the end of the day. So having a relationship, a partner that loves her and which she's a happy person is already a good thing. Why then going to on Gov, going to test it is inherently gonna be bad? Because if she's not your soul, if the person is not your soulmate, Ara will be forced to break up, because the idea of the idea that, oh, you're not my soulmate, for example, it accumulates and builds because the narrative is so powerful, for example, in which you don't have to be with someone on your soulmate or whatever, means they are more likely then to separate and go the other way, right? Which is likely why the person is not your soulmate, because the soulmate machine, for example, tests 1 in 7 billion people on Earth, for example. What is the luck on which the person you're with now is literally the person you're destined to be forever, considering there are literally different thousands of genes that happens in the whole wide world. No likelihood why that's likely on golf, right? So why then, if they leave you, it's bad? Because the comparative is that on golf, they don't even prove why then, without Ara's current partner, soulmate is something that's going to be accessible to Ara anyway, especially when there is a limited amount of capacity for Ara to reach out to loves, for example. So what happens on golf is that soulmate isn't going to be accruable anyway, and it's very hard, for example, only accessible to those who are very, very rich. That's why it's better on our side when Ara settles down, even if this person is not their soulmate, it's better to not find out, because it'll ruin the mystery, ruin the current happy feelings that we have currently. That's why it's better, because we are catering to the very worst case scenario in which this person is our soulmate, and that even if our soulmate is very far away. Second point, right? Why it is principally better on our side. Ara is a modern liberated woman in the SJW feminism era. Why then, leaving choice to other party, your choice is given to other person for dictating what relationship should look like, is bad? 2 reasons. One, having predestined fate is bad because it creates the feeling of powerlessness, right? Which is bad for Ara. One, on the worst case scenario in which her partner is not her soulmate, she'll feel crushed for the love that she has not meant to be. The memories of shared experiences, secrets whispered in bed, all gone down the drain, not by their own choice. The harm is that Ara is hurt by the love that is not meant to be, in which she feels like it should be, but it isn't. So there is a dissonance of what is true and what is the reality, meaning that Ara less likely to trust the system and love at the end of the day, that ruins her chance of having a soulmate in the future, for example. So you have to not know at all, because Ara lives in a bubble on which she's constantly happy, which currently she is, for example, then just ruining it, for example, ruining the happy moments she has currently, and for example, finding out that test, right? But secondly, right, so it's better then if we don't do that, because principally it has a better sense of authority and ownership of her choice, better agency, and she is able to decide on her own fate, on her own what her fate looks like, which is good because it means there's better accountability for her actions, which is principally better for women. So it's more equal. Secondly, even if it's the right match, it's still not good, right? Because as a woman in a patriarchal society in which your capacity to choose is usually limited by externalities like, a council full of men, for example, dictating what your body looks like, it's bad then for the same way that happy arranged marriages are bad, exactly because you take away the agency of someone to choose whether it's something that they want or not, that you then take away, for example, even if that's the person is right, for example, it's no longer just your choice, but the choice that is affirmed by a bigger external being around you, for example, which principally is bad because it means that the decision on which you make to take that test is a bad consent, because it is amplified by the very powerful narrative of society that, okay, love is important, you need to take this test, for example, because that's what the society wants from you, because that's what you need to have, for example, which is principally bad because you as a woman, for example, then becomes no longer have ownership of the decision. The decision is made by the societal standard of what you should do, which brings back the horrors, for example, of multiple botched consents that women has to endure. Lastly then, right, why then it's important, for example, even if you break up, it's better on our side. So the element of mystery that Gerhard talks about was heavily dismissed by DPM, right? Gerhard talks about 3 things. One, you don't know if they're your soulmate, but you're still happy, which makes you likely to work even harder to make them happy, to ensure that the relationship is still happy because the safety net isn't there, which they responded by saying, oh, it's impossible because soulmate is good, which doesn't necessarily correlate. 2, you both agree that you don't want to know each other's tests and as soulmates, for example, which we say is a romantic gesture of trust in love, which means you habituate better trust in the future, which they never responded at all, but they habituates effort in the relationship. Why then, even if they break up, it's still bad? Like somewhere along the line, it's not their soulmate, and then they break up for natural reasons. Why it's bad then? 3 reasons. One, for Ara, it normalizes rejection and the idea that you don't have to necessarily, separation is okay. As a modern woman, it's important there for you to not just to feel that you're okay, for example, with constant rejection, to prepare yourself from the horrors, for example, of the outside world. But second, it's better because now you're able to see, for example, what works and what you don't like in a relationship, knowing yourself better, for example, preparing yourself for future relationship because you've been with this person that did not work. The comparative on golf, they don't even try at all because, oh, even if they're happy and then they know this is not their relationship, they just separate, for example, no effort put, which is the burden that we push for using LO. But lastly, right, relationships don't have to be linear. Sometimes you outgrow each other, for example, you be with each other and then you break up, for example, and then later you'll rekindle, for example, which is good because one, you go to a self-development journey to grow yourself, to find out what you did wrong, for example, ensuring better individuality, ensuring that in the future you're able to also treat other people the same way you treat, you want to be treated, ensuring that you have better social powers. But second, you strengthen support system that is separated from just your love, which is important in a world that they describe as very love-centric. But lastly, you're able to empathize with people who do not who experience the love failures you have, making you a better empathetic human being, all within Sarah's interest. Proud to
Right, I think the second speaker of the negative team to crystallize the affirmatives case and also for final responses against the negative team, I call upon the third speaker of the affirmative, here.
Bentar, Marvin baru jalan, ada mukanya kan?
Yes.
Oke, bentar baru jalan. Tadi apa sih? Happy? Emang ada? Enggak.
Tinggal baca konten.
Okay, for ITBC, can you please check out the private chat?
Nggak ada.
Belum ada.
Yeah, wait.
Belum. Ganti background.
Sabar.
Sabar. Oh iya. Atas aja, atas. Mana.
Atas lagi.
Atas lagi. Lu mau pakai muka gua?
Yeah, because the bandwidth is kind of low. If like we get cut off or something, just tell me right away. No preference for gender pronouns. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Love is hard, but having the right information might make it far more easier. I'll talk about 2 things. First, I'll talk about accessibility and dismissing a lot of the assumption that second Mike tries to bring in this debate. Second, I'll talk about which side is better for Ara's decision making, becoming the most important metric for today's debate. First, I'll talk about accessibility and a lot of the presumption that is like based on nothing, but just likelihood analysis, which also cannot work in such a story debate that the context side is uncertain about in the first place. Firstly, they say that Ara is not a privileged woman. I don't know why is that true. I think there is also a likelihood of her being privileged. So the argument about privilege is not necessarily true. But if you want likelihood analysis, here's a likelihood analysis. We think it is far more likely that you get someone compatible or your soulmate, someone who is geographically closer for you, for example, because you have the same culture, you talk the same food, you eat the same food, you talk the same stories, for example. And those are the common factors that which I think have a high degree of likelihood this machine take into account. So it is very likely that your soulmate is also someone that is close to you in the first place. But second, if you need more likelihood analysis, we are talking about utopian society in this particular debate. What does utopian society have? I think they would have supersonic cars. I think they would have a very progressive society in which society is not patriarchal and not judge women, for example, like what second negative tries to claim. So it is easy for you to travel if you really want to find that soulmate, if your soulmate is someone coming from from someone that is abroad or someone from the other nation. Like, I think you have access for that anyway. So accessibility is not necessarily a problem. But the second thing I want to call out about the claim was that Ara is already happy in her relationship currently. No, context site doesn't say that, precisely because even their first speaker says that having a relationship does not mean happiness, which means that the context site only says that you are happy in a relationship, which means specifically they're not. Also, they don't have the fiat to say that you're happy, but you're actually far more likely to be happy on our side when you know that your partner is compatible, when you're willing to put in more efforts into that relationship. That is a relationship that is far more happier for you as an individual. So even if you want to talk about these uncertain things, we actually prove more likelihood on our side of the house. Setting aside all that, nonsensical things on the debate, I'll talk about which side is better for the decision making of Ara, precisely because both sides agree that relationship is difficult and having the ability to of some degree of agency, like what second negative conceded, is an important thing in the debate. We have 5 claims in this debate that was, I think, debate winning for this round. First, the world that Ara lives in under both sides is the same utopia world, which we characterize this technology as existing and are commonly used by people. What does this mean? This means Ara also have the information, and society even in general most likely already know how to proceed in such a relationship where you use this technology. A lot of people have experience using this machine, so more likely you also know how to use this machine in your relationship. You know the application of the relationship, for instance. So information-wise, or like you don't know how to grow in a relationship, I think we also cater that because a lot of people have gone through the same problem, right? But second, I'll flip their arguments about habituating trust. I would suggest that habituating trust is much difficult under their side of the house because in the first time you know someone, you would be far less likely to be open about everything you know because you fear that this person might be not the one that you are going to be compatible with. You're less likely to be open and be honest about who you are because you fear that the information you're giving would be dangerous and would be backlashing for your future, for instance. So the more likely scenario under their side of the house, if you try to open up and try to build up relationship, are a lot of performative trust that is performed just for the sake of people trusting you on the surface, but not one that is genuine and not one that is, honest and genuine. I think this is a very tiring process for a lot of individuals because you need to fake a lot of your personalities, you need to fake your characters, you need to slow down your enthusiasm on the relationship, for example. And this is actually what will hurt you more when you know that other person is not, is not opening up to the same degree that you are, for instance, that you know that that person is, faking that trust that you are already building. You actually get hurt even further under our side of the house. On our side of the house, we think both parties involved would have the same degree of commitment to be honest about who you are and to be open about who they are to your other partners, right? Which means you are far more likely to actually, skip and like don't need to go through this lengthy and tiring process and like right away build that relationship and get that growth that's a negative really want. But by the way, I also just want to point out that they don't explain why habituation on our side cannot happen. I think this is a norm in all romantic relationships. I think the norm will still exist regardless, so people can still, habituate trust on our side of the house as well. Certainly, they say that the parameter of a good relationships is about growth. I think growth actually is better also on our side when both parties have the equal incentives to put into the efforts that are equal. A lot of relationships fall apart in the status quo because they feel that the other partners is not giving as much as you give. It might be about the money, for example. Some partners are paying the other partners more, or someone is investing more in their time and the other is too busy every day. These are the types of things that make relationship broken because they feel like the investment that both parties are making is not equal and they feel that this is not a fair relationship. On our side, you're far more likely to make these sacrifices. You're far more likely to to put in the maximum effort that because this is the partner that you have. So that is the incentive to make sure that this relationship lasts quite long. But fourthly, I think their argument about learning from your past relationship is also harmful actually on the other side of the house. The first thing to point out was that relationship is highly subjective, so you cannot learn from your past relationship. When your new partner is a different person with different personalities, with different things that they like, you need to adapt to this relationship again. So that's also highly tiring. But second, I would ask, why should you hurt yourself when you can already be convinced that this is your partner and be satisfied with your partner? You don't need to go through all the hurting moment like what second negative tries to posit in this debate. I think it's far better if you can already be happy just one try rather than trying to go through multiple hurting relationships on their side of the house. That deals with the second speaker arguments. Now let's talk about what have we brought to you that has been unresponded to. I think they have been very, very dismissive with our characterization of harm. And notably that this argument about harm is not contingent on whether the current relationship is going on well or not. It's not contingent on whether the partner Ara having right now is a good guy or not, or whether Ara is privileged or not. What we told you is that knowing that you can access this information, knowing that the technology exists, knowing that you can probably have some information about the partner that you're dating right now, means that it means that it will create large amount of insecurities for Ara currently when she knows that she's not taking this decision, because we characterize that if this technology exists and probably it's going to be popular in the media, in society, and there's a high pressure for them to do this. I think when Ara choose not to do this, there's a lot of pressure and also insecurities coming from him, Ara herself and also her partner, to question whether this is the right partner or not. But second, and even more harmful, is the regret that is coming from those two individuals, right? Because I think regret comes not from the fact that you have to leave him, for example, or you need to break up because this is not the perfect choice. I think regret comes from, you know, choosing not to use technology and like encountering problems throughout your way. Because I think problems are something that's going to happen under both sides of the house. The question in this debate is, how do you deal with those problems? We explained that you're likely to be, you know, be more angry, to be more aggressive, to blame yourself and also your partner because you know that it's not a compatible partner, for example, because you think that I should have known that this was not a compatible partner. Why don't I use this technology? That is the kind of regret that you will think and will come up every time you have a problem. You always think that it's not a compatible partner, so you don't put the effort to build on the relationship. You're more likely to say that let's just break up because probably you are not my soulmate. That harm is magnified under their side of the house every time a problem comes, because you are always be constantly reminded by not making this choice. On the comparative, we told you that love under their side of the house is blind, and you have a lot of external factors to determine whether someone is compatible or not. And that information is largely arbitrary and is largely determined by something that is, you know, uncertain to begin with. Under our side of the house, you can have that full-fledged information to make the decision for yourself, and having that information is the important factor for you to be convinced and be, you know, and be content about the decision that you make. Love is difficult, but having this choice makes Ara make far better decision than what negative can provide to you in this debate. And for all those reasons, we're very proud of her.
All right, I think third speaker from the affirmative. Now to crystallize the negative case and also for final responses against the affirmative, I call upon the third speaker of the negative team. Here.
Hi, test, quick check if I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, cool. Setting our timer. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The ability to find someone in a world where everyone else has predetermined relationships, and knowing that despite there is a perfect partner for you somewhere, you still chose me. If I were Ara's girlfriend, I would be so very happy, because the idea that it is your own personal choice of your own volition that you chose to be with me means that I'm more likely to be in a committed relationship with you. I'm happy that you chose me and I'm going to work for it, right? The fact that in the context slide, using their own wording, right, because they're very dependent on the context slide, that they're in a happy relationship means that they have gone through so much together, they have agreements, and they are willing to commit to the relationship to the while, right? These are two people who, despite without using the machine, and despite knowing that the machine exists, choose to be together. That's why we think it's very likely that they're going to be happy together, right? I think that I'm going to discuss two things in this debate. One, on a principle level regarding what best suits her own personal preferences, what a relationship should be, and how it's supposed to like operate in the future. But second, like, let's talk about the practicalities, right? Let's talk about what happens after, because there's no use to the debate if you don't characterize what these actors are going to do in the future and whether or not these are beneficial or harmful to them, right? So in the first class, regarding the principles, right, we told you regarding how mystique is important for a relationship, because here's the thing, it's true that love is irrational. So that's why it's not a choice that you make on your own. It's okay if it's not something that you decide, like, even if it's here. But what did they try to argue? Basically, or they try to choose is the very classic argument of a good choice is an informed choice, right? But what they don't tell you is, what does information do? Information is good in cases of COVID. Information is good in cases of democracy, because information prevents future harms. In relationships, you cannot prevent future harms because often the nature is unpredictable and something you will not be able to prevent regardless, right? But we think that it's wrong. We think that a good choice, if we must engage, is a choice that you can fully understand and can take responsibility of, and a choice that you made individually that Ara can be proud of, right? Then if they want to ask so much questions, then the question is, how do you know it's not your soulmate, right? They talk about how you believe that's your own soulmate you're going to be projecting. Here's the thing. Ara has the right to choose for herself and determine her own destiny, right? It hurts a lot more, and it's principally wrong to infringe on her right to make choices, especially when in invalidating your choices, you cannot explain the reasons. The mechanism is unclear, right? They're just going to determine whether or not this is going to be a soulmate, but they don't explain to you why this is not a relationship, your soulmate, or why you're not compatible with each each other. So you're less likely to have closure. If you break up, you're only going to say this is because of the machine, right? We think that the reason why this is going to be harmful and the reason why this is going to infringe her principles of like self-determination is threefold, right? One, you're disrespecting all the time, energy, and emotions spent inside the relationship, right? These are things that not anyone else in the world experienced, but these two individuals, but especially Ara on her own, right? These are things that she was proud of, but the moment you infringe on that right, that's going to cause self-doubt within her because you think that she is not capable of making her own decisions. She's not able to decide for herself what kind of values is important to her and what kind of experiences matter to her as an individual, right? But second, you're going to set very unclear standards for your next relationship, right? Because you force yourself to be glad for what good relationship's supposed to be. They told you regarding how they're going to be sad because they compare it with other people's relationships. Exactly. It's not a benefit that you can own up to. It's not a benefit that you claim on your own. That's why you're going to be alternatively super unhealthy, right? On our side of the house, freedom of choices exists when you reject the concept of a soulmate. Why is it better? One, accountability over your own life's choices, respecting people's individuality and like how they make different ways and how they're able to have different experiences. Second, you normalize failure and gathering experiences. You gauge out your taste and values. You don't immediately get like your one perfect thing, and that's why it's going to be more rewarding to individuals. But three, you rationalize your choices, right? It's okay if she doesn't want to move on because she feels like their rational love is a lot more sustainable because it's going to be in line with their professional relationships. It's going to be in line with their life ambitions and desires, and it's going to be in line with their emotional capacity or capability. These are choices that they can make on their own. But here's the thing, even if they do regret, here's the thing, meaning and experience matters. The bitter truth is that not all of us is meant to have a good love story. In that world, probably there will be people whose soulmates have died, whose soulmates have terminal cancer, and so on and so forth. And that is fine because we can have other meaningful relationships in life. We can have a new perspective that all of our friends and family do not have, and therefore are able to warn them, for example, if they're about to sacrifice their progress in like career for the sake of their love life. But three, that means that you have a specified and your own life, which is special in a world where everyone is sheeps and slaves to a game called like the soul. You can take responsibility and you can be different from everyone else. This is all the more important and something that's exclusive because as Arab, probably you want to have your own life, something that makes you special and different in a world where everyone else is the same. So on a principle level, we win. But second, discussing all the multitudes of practicality, something that's important because we debate for the sake of characterization and analysis. Here's the thing. Insecurity is not a valid thing to argue because here's the thing. Why are they so insecure, right? People only enter relationships that they like. If you don't like the relationship, you can simply break up. So that means the fiat is that they're already really happy in the relationship. But here's the thing. Insecurity is a bad habit that should not be enabled and accepted, right? Because insecurity will harm them regardless. If it's true that they're unsure simply because of a machine that does not know the intricacies of their life, one, you will live a life full of guilt in the future because even if you do find a perfect partner, you feel guilty because your partner seems to be too good for you as an individual. Second, you become a very untrusting individual who's always possessive and jealous of your partner, right? Because you feel like, what if they decide to go against the machine and find someone else who can make them happier? But three, you blame the machine and become immature in the sense that you don't own up to your own mistakes and relationships, right? Comparatively, on ourselves, if you ignore the soulmate concept where you have to work on yourself to have a good relationship, you are more likely to treat your insecurity, right? Because one, you're going to see a therapist and learn to be more secure with yourself. Maybe it's true, maybe it stems from childhood trauma. Maybe it stems from the fact that your parents never really show you what a proper love is and reciprocate your efforts for emotional satisfaction, right? But here's the thing, you learn to become tolerant, you learn to accept each other's flaws and personalities. These are things that will not be handed to you. These are things that are not a given because, oh, this person is my predestined soulmate. And that's a benefit, we think that in ourselves. That's something that should be celebrated, right? But here's the thing, the fear of one-sided relationship is something that's super weird because one, there's no guarantee anyways that they will find a soulmate. Like there's a likelihood analysis that they're going to be someone close and so on and so forth. If that's the case, you probably don't need the machine, right? If everyone always has a like partner or soulmate that's close to them. So this is not a certain benefit that they can claim. But second, this is not completely impossible to detect, right? When your love is one-sided because once human beings are blessed with intuition. It's not something that's rational. It's something that's magical. But how you can get in your gut feeling that something is wrong, you know that that your partner doesn't love you. But second, you have basic observation skills, right? What am I talking about? But how do you know when your partner does not reciprocate your feelings, right? One, they don't take the time to watch you in your grand final. Two, you have to look for them first for any conversation at all. They don't try to chat you first. But three, you take their thoughts and ideas seriously. But when you try to tell them the same, they probably are going to joke about it or like be negative about it generally, just not a good thing. But all in all, if you feel unhappy and you feel like, oh, this is a one-sided relationship and something that probably other people can see, and if you do have like good friends and good family, they will warn you, like they want you to be happy, then probably it's not something that you should worry so much about, right? But lastly, right, when you talk about, oh, you're going to fight only on little things because you know it's worth it, right? On our side, whether or not you fight will not be decided arbitrarily about how long a relationship exists. Even if it's short, even if it's live-it, even if you fight all the time, it's going to be based on your own personal values and your own degree of prioritization, because ARA cannot be replaced. We respectfully oppose.
All right, I thank the third speaker of the negative for that speech. Now to summarize the whole case of the negative, I call upon the negative reply here.
Wait, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Yep. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Golf is confusing because they say that soulmates aren't perfect, but they never explain to you why there is incentive for them to work on the relationship with the soulmate. We've proven to you 3 structural analysis as to why the comparative on which we don't know that it is our soulmate, they are more likely to be incentivized to work better on the relationship because of the element of mystery, right? Golf's never proven to you likelihood as to why then working with soulmate, being in a relationship with the soulmate is good, but never proven to you how soulmate is attainable to their very late mechanism addition from the golf whip, but never proven to you as well why then even if it's not a soulmate, then why that it's likely going to be a ruined relationship, for example, not likely at all, only impact, right? How then I would judge this debate? 2 ways. 1, principle. Secondly, whether the soulmate is likely to bring happiness or not, whether taking the test will bring principle, benefit or not. First things first, right? Principle. Golf brought 2 principles: limitations of harm and agency of ARA. Up brought 2 principles: sense of ownership and also a sense of body autonomy. How should you weigh this? Best case, worst case, parameter, right? Best case. Golf's best case that, okay, we choose the machine, we take it, for example, it's a choice that we make. But we responded to this, engaged with this, by saying that is a form of bad consent because it is ARA seeking validation, conforming to majority. It's a consent that is not of her own choice because at the end it's because she's influenced by the majority narrative that happens in society. But secondly, on the worst case, they claim, right, that, oh, the worst case is that our worst case is that, oh, people are going to fail. For example, there's going to be a sense of regret. Harm is going to happen. But when you compare that, right, with the ownership that ARA has over her own choice, the sense of individuality as a young woman in a patriarchal society, we've proven to you, right, that even if it goes to shit, it's principally okay because it's a decision that is made by ARA, that is something that she is not afforded to in the first place. This is important because we contextualize how the character looks like, the background of what she looks like in a story motion, which is important to give likelihood and life to the character, making it more believable compared to your case, which you never explain, for example, why then having limitation of harm is that good of a deal for ARA, for example, especially in the relation to a relationship. That's why principle is better on op. Second, practical benefit, right? Whether taking the test will bring happiness. Golf brought 3 points: sense of regret, soulmate is better, no explanation why. But lastly, talking about how the relationship will be more fulfilling. Opposition brought 3 points, right? 1, soulmate isn't certain because it's a privileged concept. But second, even if they're your own soulmate, it's better when you don't know because the mystery makes you bring that incentive structure to work better on the relationship, bring effort, doesn't make the relationship stale, for example, want to lengthen that uncertain feeling of being in love because they feel like it's fleeting and they want to make the most best of it, right? But thirdly, is that even if we break up, right, it's better because it as a learning experience, but also most importantly, it allows ARA to focus on other things and work on herself. At least it's her choice, right? How should you weigh this, right? Best case, let's engage, right? Golf says best case that, okay, we take the test, it's their soulmate. We've explained to you that even if you know that it's the soulmate, you are less likely gonna work on the relationship because you are less likely to feel there is an urgency to work on it because it's a settled thing. There's a blanket, sense of safety. Well, they say, oh, but it won't happen because you're your soulmate, but they will, it will be so compatible. But we explain that the compatibility that is too much is bad because then you're complicit to never work on the relationship, making you unhappy. Worst case then, their worst case is when we say that there is no, this partner is not Ara's partner at all, right? Why then we win? Because Gulf's engagement is that, okay, then they're gonna separate, they're gonna find the other soulmate. No explanation why, but also on a position, we prove that it's a arduous process. It's harmful because you're being forced to make a decision, to break off when you're so in love with someone, not for your own choice, but because there's an externality making you hate the system, changing you forever, for example, making you untrustworthy in love. But also, it's better even if we break up naturally on our side, because then it allows for better self-development and allowing for better, relationship in the future. That's why we win, because better best case, worst case scenario, very engaging. Give it to Ui.
All right, I think the negative reply for that speech. Now, to summarize the case of the affirmative and also to close this debate as a whole, I call upon the affirmative reply here.
Audible?
Yes, audible.
Oh, okay, great. Right. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Listen to negative reply. Principle in IVED, clear, late, right? You don't need to count it at all. Principle, we win, because the virtue of we cannot rebut at all. But let's take a look at their cases. Firstly, they said that, oh yeah, Ara is currently happy. Read the context slide, nothing about happiness, just utopic context slide, I don't understand. But secondly, relationship is hard, both sides agree. Fighting to happen, meaning that Ara most likely can be unhappy as well. Meaning that the delta should be, how then Ara should eventually behave when they eventually have the information or not, right? That is the tipping point is the debate. But the next thing, what is they brought? They basically brought a lot of things about saying that soulmate is bad, so on and so forth. We want to pose to you 3 things. Number 1, if soulmate is bad, then why the alternative of soulmate is not bad? Because literally soulmate is a concept where those persons are much more compatible to us, regardless very compatible or not, right? The most closest for us to eventually get the happiness, that is the concept that literally exists in dictionary. So read dictionary, right? But the next thing that they try to claim is that the principle about validation and choices. 3 things. Number 1, we are Ara. We make the choices whether or not we want to take this machine or not. That is to say, the setup coming from Prime Minister is not that we suddenly will break up. We suddenly will only choose the soulmate. No, we never said that. The only thing that we said, regardless what Ara did, the information that you got for you to eventually continue in your daily life is important for you to eventually rationalize yourself whether or not your choices that you take right now, the consequences of it is actually justified or not for you to go. That is the principle that they have, regardless of the outcome that they've tried to bring, is the most important thing is the debate. Why is that so? The outcome and negative are dependent who Ara is. They said that, soulmate is privileged, they might believe in Italy or something like that. What if Ara is Kate Upton that literally have a tons of $1 million? What if Ara is Nicki Minaj that is very pretty, for example, that able to attract a lot of guys, for example? Basically, Ara is a realms of endless possibility that we'll never understand what Ara is. It means that our practical idea about probability is questionable in their side of the house. You should take principle idea as the most important thing is the debate in regards of information that you got for the self-determination choices that is much better, because choices are dependent to the information that you got. We taught you that the limitation information in the side of the house. What did they try to claim? That soulmate is bad, and when you know that who is the soulmate is bad in terms of relationship. 1, when you are in your current relationship, most likely you also think and assume that your current boyfriend or girlfriend is your soulmate. If not, all the harm that we told to you about insecurity and those kind of things exists because you know and you assume that the current partner is not your soulmate, meaning that you understand there is a realms of possibility where you will break up, you will face a lot of heartbreak. What they said that? They said that, oh yeah, it's good because you can trial and error, so on and so forth. Firstly, instead of PM, we told you trial and error about the experience, those kind of thing, you can still experiment it with your soulmate, and it's much better because there is no process of bad things happen. What kind of process of bad things? Heartbroken, for instances, that literally Chris, the judges, do not really want to eventually fill in the comment, right? We see Katy Perry hurting herself. We see Taylor Swift facing toxic cheating in her boyfriend in her 20s, for example. That is a huge practical harm in their side of the house. Then what they claim, lastly, they try to claim that there is, if you have a certain soulmate and you fail with soulmate, you have no preparation whatsoever, right? we question why the hell you suddenly will fail with your current soulmate, why you cannot learn with your soulmate. The reason why you cannot take this idea from their side is simply because of the reply. It is simplistic, only explanation with no likelihood of why you fail with your current soulmate and what will happen if you fail with your current soulmate, so on and so forth. Unclear. We told you in PM, if this is your soulmate, there is most likely that you will try to eventually fix yourself as well, so on and so forth, like the nature of every relationship at all. What is the conclusion then? All practical harm or benefit are questionable. The most important thing is a principle of information, because this is the rationality of choices that you may have. We think that this is a clear win because principal idea never been rebutted in their side, but even if they bring principal idea, it's led from object that literally no one should count because this is a new argument coming from their side. We're very proud to affirm.
All right, I think the affirmative reply for that speech. So that marks the end of the grand final round of IVED 2022. Once again, everyone, congratulations for making it this far. Now, while waiting for the decision, yeah, you can wait here while the judges will go to the deliberation room. Yeah, so, okay.